And we are live. How's it going, everyone? Today we have a pretty extraordinary guest from a project building a money market on Solana. I'm referring to Port Finance, which more simply is a lending and borrowing protocol, but there's a lot more going on under the hood. Luckily, today we have Gabriel Wong, a core developer at Port Finance. Gabriel notably worked at Google and has contributed to the ETH and Solana DeFi ecosystems, which really makes this project exciting. So without further ado, I'm going to add Gabriel in here. How's it going, Gabriel?
Hey, Greg. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's been pretty good.
awesome. It's amazing to get you on here and just excited to talk about what you guys are building at Port Finance. I know I just gave a real brief general overview there, and we'll kind of get into talking about Port and more of the specifics over the stream. But to start, Gabriel, can you outline what Port Finance is and the goal of the project you guys are building?
Yeah, sure. So we have been building Port Finance, and our goal has been to provide a whole suite of money market products. We aim to provide not only just variable rate lending, but also fixed rate lending and also interest rate swap. Our investors includes Jump Capital, GSR, Rarestone, and DeFi Alliance, and among other Solana projects that we have been working very closely, including Mercurial, Selenium, and Radium. So we are one of the first project that launches our variable rate lending product. Currently, we support over 15 assets, ranges from stablecoins, protocol tokens, and also LP tokens coming from Saber. 3 weeks ago, we also launched our fixed rate lending protocol, Sundial. We believe that our fixed rate lending protocol will unleash the true potential of the Solana blockchain, since it actually uses the Ethereum order book, which provides a much more effective interest rate discovery mechanism compared to the more traditional AMMs. And recently, we have also launched our governance module with Tribeca.
Yeah, that's awesome. That sounds like you guys are moving really quickly and really leveraging the technology here on Solana to offer innovative products. You mentioned a bit about Sundial, and we'll definitely get into the fixed rate lending and why this is notable compared to some other DeFi products that are traditionally offered. I think another really interesting aspect about the project is the backing you guys have received. It's some of the biggest names in the space, and I'm curious how that has played a role in building. But before we get to that question, I'm curious to learn a little bit about the team's background at Port Finance and the beginnings of the protocol.
Yeah, so we were working at some tech companies in London. So two other co-founders, including myself, was previously at Google and Facebook. And then we get to know each other um, around 2017 times. And initially, we were just trading cryptos, just buying, selling Bitcoins,
Okay.
others. And then we get into alts. And then we become more sophisticated and we start to trade derivatives, mostly just perpetuals. And then in 2020, we found out about the Serum IO conducted on FTX, and we get a chance to participate in. So by buying Serum, we actually learn about the Solana blockchain. And then coming from an engineering background, we start to learn about how to program on it. And it's actually quite different from ETH model that we have know a bit about.
Okay.
And then after getting started, we learned that Solana blockchain and its related ecosystem. And at that time, we realized there's actually no lending and borrowing protocols. So me and my two other co-founders decided to work one. And then as we were working on the variable rate borrowing and lending protocols, we realized it's actually the fixed rate one is actually more favorable compared to the variable ones. So that is also the reason why we decided to offer a full suite of interest rate products. So we not just want to do the variable rate one, we also want to implement a fixed rate one since it gives users more predictability.
Yeah. That's awesome to hear that you guys sort of started dabbling inside of the crypto space, but then quickly realize the innovation, but also the fact that there wasn't a lot of people building. There were missing products, things like a money market suite that you guys are building at Port Finance didn't necessarily exist on the Solana ecosystem. And there's a couple other people building, but it definitely seems like you guys have massive support and are looking to bring out innovative products. So that takes me to my next question. You guys noticed there was no lending and borrowing, no money market on Solana, and you have gotten massive support from ecosystem projects, VCs in the space, notably Alameda Research, DeFi Alliance, Jump Capital. You mentioned some in the beginning. These were between a Series A and a seed round for a total of over 6 million. What has this meant for Port in building on Solana? How has it been working with some of these projects? Notably, I think the DeFi Alliance is a really cool incubator that you guys are working with. So I'm just curious, what has this meant for Port Finance and how has it really moved you guys forward as a DeFi protocol?
Yeah, we have been super excited to onboard amazing investors. And we also were part of the DeFi Alliance cohort 5. And also, side note about DeFi Alliance, they just launched a DAO. So they just launched an Alliance DAO and raised over
Awesome.
50 million. And all these investors has been super helpful. And they provide strategic advice and also provides super important connections and then ideas on how we can promote projects. And then some of the investors are actually the user of the protocol itself. They can actually provide valuable feedback coming from a user. And then having them on board, of course, they provide capital that allow us to expand the team. And then they also provide a lot of experience because they have helped many other projects to grow and expand. And in addition, having them on board also provides us with more credibility for the projects. So users will trust us more because all these amazing investors choose to invest in us.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it really brings the ethos to Port Finance. It shows that there's really credible investors that are looking to back you guys. They believe in your product. They think it's innovative. So I think that's a perfect segue to what are you guys currently offering at Port Finance for any users that are on here right now that might go pick up and open the D app? What can they expect to see on Port Finance?
Yeah. So right now we have two major offerings. The first one is our variable rate borrowing and lending product that supports 15 different assets. So ranging from like protocol tokens, we support Mercurials, Saber, Bitcoins, Wormhole Ethereum, and then also OP tokens from Sabers, and then many other tokens using the bridge. For example, we support UST and also Ethereum. And then most recently, we just supported Bonfida. And then going forward, we plan to add some more new assets. And then we also plan to allow users to decide which assets to add using our latest governance module, Tribeca. And
Awesome.
on the fixed rate lending side, currently we support USDC, where user can lend out their USDCs at a fixed rate. Current rate, I think, is around 6% APY. And then going forward, we hope to launch more stablecoins starting from USDT, and then UST, etc. And then also to support fixed rate borrowing.
Awesome. And I think there's a couple notable things. One is just that you guys are pushing to get more assets listed, really open up the money market. So if people want to lend and borrow SOL, they're able to do that. Sounds like you opened up support for Bonfida and you have a number of different assets. So I think that's great. And also as well that you guys are looking to transfer some of this power to the users via the DAO. And we'll definitely get into the Tribeca partnership and how you guys set up your DAO, because I think that's incredibly important, especially as we talk about decentralized finance. it's really important for projects to have a route for the users to actually take part in the protocol governance. So we'll get into that. But you mentioned two different types of lending. And I think the first one that most DeFi users are familiar with is variable rate lending. And this is just where interest rates can fluctuate. And it's the typical lending and borrowing model we've seen on a lot of DeFi blue chips. Can you touch on why fixed rate lending is notable? I know it's in the name, but for anyone just jumping in who may be new, why is fixed rate lending attractive to a lot of investors?
Yeah. So I think firstly, if we look at the traditional financial market, we can see that almost most of the loans are in the form of fixed rate lending. For example, if say you are buying a car or buying a house, you wouldn't expect the interest rate changes every
Yeah.
second. So for example, on Aave, like in 2021, the rate could go from 3% to 66% in a day. So it's quite unuser friendly when the rate could change so drastically within a day. And then for more institution investors, what they will want to have is all this deterministic rate where they can be sure if I'm borrowing, say, $1 million from your protocols, towards the end, I know upfront how much I'm going to repay so that I can calculate, I can make sure, set up this amount of money from my balance sheet instead of having to, until the very end, I know how much I need to repay back. And for sophisticated users, they will much rather know upfront, and then they can go and do liquidity mining elsewhere without worrying about their interest rate will actually eaten up their liquidity mining gains.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It sounds like a much more, just in general, more user friendly, more institutional friendly product because people don't want to have to worry about their interest rate varying based on the supply and demand. They can just lock in for a fixed interest rate like we see in most products in traditional finance. I'm curious, what are the risks? I don't necessarily want to say risks. What is the opportunity cost of fixed rate lending? Are the yields slightly lower because you have to guarantee? Um, what is the slight trade-off, if there is any, on fixed rate lending?
I think right now, if you are doing fixed rate lending, the nature is that you will need to lock your capital for a fixed amount of time in order
Okay.
to gain the fixed rate. Because otherwise, say it wouldn't make sense if you can lock your capital, um, lock or unlock your capital at any times to
Yeah.
get a fixed rate. Because for example, if I see a 10% rate and then I think the rate is good, I want to lock indefinitely. That wouldn't work because someone has to pay that rate. So I think comparing to the variable rate, the only downside is that the term is fixed also. So
Okay.
it might not be suitable if you want kind of like you want to withdraw at any time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it just also depends on the time frame and if the user is comfortable with their rate. I think that outlines the differences between fixed rate and variable rate lending and borrowing. I'm curious, you touched on order book lending. I personally haven't heard of this before, and it sounds like you guys are leveraging Serum, which is a massive player and piece of infrastructure in the ecosystem. Can you touch on how order book lending is achieved? How are you guys putting this on an order book? And what are the benefits of this? It seems fairly attractive.
Yeah, so I think this is a great question. So back then when we were thinking about this whole idea, we realized that actually the core benefit of implementing something on Solana is speed. And by having this speed, we can actually utilize the existing Ethereum infrastructure, which led us initially to the Solana ecosystem.
Yeah.
By having the Ethereum infrastructure, we are actually able to increase the capital efficiency by 10x, because liquidity is not put into a pool, but instead they get to put into an orders on the order book where user can actually trade against. And then we will create a market to actually allow users to trade the interest rate. So for users who want to lend out, they are actually buying the principal tokens from the order books. And comparing to the AMMs, it increases the capital efficiency. And also it provides a much more effective way to discover the current interest rate, since the orders can be changed, cancelled, and replaced at any time, reflects to a constant interest rate changes that's done by the market. So we don't need a fixed curve that is, for example, that is fixed, but instead the market will discover the interest rate itself. So we believe that a lot of the compromise that needs to be made on Ethereum is not needed anymore on Solana, given all this improvement on the blockchain itself.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you point that out, because I imagine it has similar traditional when lending and borrowing protocols utilize a AMM type curve. I imagine it has the similar issue where a lot of liquidity isn't efficiently being used, whereas the order book, like you outlined, it sounds like it much more enforces price action, as we see in traditional finance, where 99% of things, to my knowledge, is on an order book. So it seems a lot more usable, less of a jump for most users that may be onboarded. And then, yeah, what else is incredibly notable is just the speed of Solana. I'm curious, do we see this order book lending on any other chains, or is this something that specifically Serum has opened up?
I think Solana enables this kind of 100% on-chain order book borrowing and lending. I don't think any other chains will have this kind of capability to support it. If you want
Yeah.
to do something on Ethereum, you need to do it off-chain, not on-chain. But on Solana, you can do it 100% on-chain, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's definitely notable. And I think that's something that sets Port Finance apart. There's a bunch of money markets that offer lending and borrowing, but it really seems like Port is driving and pushing to build something innovative. This is a similar question to what we just touched on, but I'm curious why Solana. You really already answered that, but how has it in general been working and building with projects in the ecosystem? It doesn't look like Serum was the only project that you guys have integrated with. It looks like you guys have a few other partnerships. How is it working in the ecosystem with these other projects?
Yeah, we have been super lucky to be able to work with so many amazing partners. So we've been working super closely with Mercurial team, and then with the Orca team, and also Marinate team, Saber team, and MemeFi, and Pirates. So many different projects that we work very closely. And we are super impressed by both their technical expertise and also their understanding of DeFi. And in general, I think there are many projects that comes from a very prestigious traditional company or tech companies. And we're super amazed by how many talents are actually within the Solana ecosystem. And we actually get to work with them closely. And we have seen so many new projects coming out. There's Friction Labs that's amassed over 100 million TVL in
Yeah.
such a short period of time. And then also there's projects such as Mango Market, super into open source. We haven't got to work with them directly, but we are super impressed by what they have done. And also Zeta Market is coming to mainnet, I think tomorrow. So super impressed by how much talents are actually within the system, and we actually get to work with some of them.
Yeah, this seems to be the common theme in Solana. The builders within the ecosystem are incredibly notable. And this has been in general, I've probably interviewed close to 10, maybe upwards of Solana ecosystem projects. And it almost always comes back to a similar answer that it's great to see everyone else building, but also the environment itself. People are typically willing to help out and partner up and tackle problems together. So it's really notable that I hear this across the board. So I always like to ask that question and see the perspective from builders themselves. To pivot a little bit, I think there's a couple notable things to touch on as we get closer to the end. You guys had an issue in the past with an instruction implementation, and I think the way you went about it and how you solved this problem was really well handled. So, to just ask a better and more broad question, smart contract security is extremely important. How do you guys look to reduce the risk? I've seen you guys are looking to do a few different things to proactive, but I'm just curious to hear it from your perspective. What are the things you guys are doing to reduce this risk? Most notably, I saw you just launched this $500,000 Immunify bounty, but I'll just let you talk on smart contract security as a whole.
Yeah, so we always treat security as our number one priority. So most recently, as you mentioned, we launched a 500,000 bug bounty with Immunify. And then prior to that, we have strike a partnership with InsureAce, where they offers Solana insurance at a quite low premium rate. They are one of the leading insurance providers, and for users who want to purchase cover, you can go to their website and purchase cover for port finance. And then before that, we have conducted several security audits. We have done audits from Brahmin System, Kudoski, and we most recently completed a slow mist one. And then we are also get peer-reviewed our code from other Solana projects. And then also we have a quite rigorous internal code reviews framework where each submissions are treated in a quite high standards. And then we have integration test to ensure that all the codes behave as expected.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sorry, I didn't know if you wanted to add any more there. Or you good?
Yeah. So I think for anything that's security related, we want to treat with our highest standard. Like this is, we believe that it shouldn't be like, in order for DeFi to actually reach billion users, we can't have like hacks like every other weeks. It's just simply not going to work.
I 100% agree. And I think this is why it's a good question. I like to hear all the different processes projects do. And most notably, I think this bug bounty is amazing. It shows that you guys are really looking to be proactive on the front of smart contract security. You're trying to catch the problem before it happens. You also understand the risks are fairly high in DeFi. I see some projects doing fairly small price tag bug bounties. And as sad or malicious as it may be, the opportunity cost for some of these hackers, whether they're on the fence about being white hats or black hats, may sometimes not be worth it. But seeing this massive incentive, you guys understanding how valuable the security of your project is, I think it's quite notable. So I always like to ask that question. And it ties back to the fact that smart contract security is a underlying risk that exists in the space, as does with a lot of human guided things. There's people writing this code. It can be prone to small errors. So it's really important to really take all the steps needed to reduce this risk. I was mentioning the instruction implementation earlier. I'm just curious, you guys can't always be proactive. This is something we've seen across DeFi, not so much on Solana. Solana has been a great chain overall in the sense of smart contract security. What did you guys learn from your small hiccup from the instruction implementation, and how do you look to move forward? Because I think this is incredibly important to see. One, most importantly, that projects are being proactive on smart contract security, which it definitely seems like you guys are doing that with the numerous audits, the peer reviews, the bug bounties. But in the scenario where you guys did have to be reactive, what did you guys learn and how did you move forward from this?
Yeah, so we made a mistake when trying to remediate an issues that we have encountered, I think back in last year. And then some users' funds are lost, and we actually compensated all of our users. We have learned important lessons from issues. We have now doing regular on-chain state monitoring to make sure that all the states are in line and there's no strange behaviors. And also, as mentioned earlier, we have a bug bounty program within MuFi, and then we want to do all this proactive stuff to ensure that there's as low chance of issue happening again as possible.
Yeah, and I definitely think there's a few notable things to outline here. And it's the fact that smart contract security should be held to a holy grail standard in DeFi and Web3 as a whole. And it sounds like you guys are posturing towards this. It's also notable to outline that things can go wrong. This is something we see across all of DeFi over the past few years as it's risen to popularity. But it's notable how you guys have moved forward, learned from this, and also owned up to the mistakes. You compensated users from the treasury. So I think that's really notable. And I just wanted to spend some time on these questions because I think it's really important for new users to understand this concept of smart contract security and also hear about the project they're investing in or using and understanding what their stance is on smart contract security being such a delicate and important subject. To pivot a bit, community is always really important in projects. And especially when we get to this idea of decentralization, it really comes down to the idea of how do you get the users or the protocol in general more decentralized. I think we see a really big issue right now where we like to call it DeFi, but it's still very much not decentralized. And there's a reason behind this. A lot of these products need to be built. So there has to be a transition of, okay, when does this really start to hit full decentralization? When can this run on its own? So this is a roundabout way of asking a couple things. Let's start with the Super Team DAO bounty. It looks like you guys used a bounty to redo the UI of your project. Am I understanding this correctly? I think this is a great aspect of decentralization here. You guys are incentivizing people to come build and design things. Am I understanding that bounty correctly?
Yep, we have launched a UI UX bounty so that a lot of designers within the community can actually chime in and then give us a lot of suggestions on how we can improve on our existing user journey and also how we add features to make it more user understandable.
Yeah. And I think that's just one notable thing you're doing. I want to run through a couple things here, most notably the DAO, of course. But moving forward, there's another thing you guys did to start building up this decentralized ecosystem, really support what's going on around you. You have the port ecosystem grants. Do you want to touch on this a little bit? I know Pole Finance may have been the first recipient. Do you want to speak on them a little bit and just what the main mission of these ecosystem grants are? I think it's notable to see projects raise these ecosystem funds and really, or set aside these ecosystem funds and use it to better and build the ecosystem around them?
Yeah, so I think the main goal of setting up this ecosystem fund is to actually enable more composability within DeFi ecosystem. So we believe that the core value proposition of DeFi is its composability and its openness for other projects to build on top of it. And for us, the first ecosystem grant goes to Pole Finance. What they have been working on is they help users repeatedly lend and borrow and then do it in cycles to maximize their liquidity mining gains. Instead of user needs to go to ports UI, do it manually. So that's the main issues that they've been solving. And we have been helping them in terms of integrating with Port Finance itself. And then also gave them a grant to incentivize them and to align the interest so that both of us can actually grow together. And we
Yeah.
have also been working with several lending aggregators to automatically rebalance among the lending protocol with the highest yields. But when we talking to them, their feedback was like the hardest part is actually not the rebalancing part, but the hardest part is actually different lending protocols will offer some sort of liquidity mining incentives, but not all of them is claimable, which makes
Okay.
things a bit more complicated. Some protocols might need some delays, which will hinder users' withdrawal. So
Yeah. And I think what was really notable is how you started off saying to increase composability, the sense that Web3 has this onus on being composable, really working together. And at the same time, it's simultaneously expanding Port Finance's utility while you guys are still developing the core product. So I think it's a very efficient way of just getting more innovation for not only Port Finance, but the overall Solana ecosystem. So I thought that was something notable to touch on. And wrapping all the way back to the segue, how we got here in the sense of decentralization, you guys recently partnered with Tribeca to launch a DAO. Can you touch on the overall concepts and the goals of this DAO?
yeah, totally. So Tribeca is actually it aims to be a governance modules that can be shared among many different projects. So it's like a governance framework where users can extend on top of it. So it's actually a collective effort among many leading protocols, including Saber, Atrix, Serum, Frictions, and we are proud to also be one of the contributors. So Tribeca has some great integration with the Goki smart wallet, and then also the Quarry protocol, and it is actually built with Anchor, the most popular Solana development framework, which offers a very simple interface. And Tribeca is designed in a minimalistic way so that others can extend on top of it. So we are super excited for the launch of Tribeca, and we have set up the port DAO using Tribeca.
Yeah. And specifically on the DAO, for anyone who may be kind of new to crypto, it's a decentralized autonomous organization. The goal is to shift the onus of the protocol, really the direction of the protocol, to the users itself, and enforce this idea of decentralization and the whole onus of Web3 of having things user owned. I'm curious, what in the early stages can DAO members take advantage of and utilize, potentially vote on?
Yeah, so DAO members can basically vote on anything that's related to the protocols. So anyone can create a new proposal, and then once the proposal is activated, there will be a voting period opens where all the VE port holders can vote on proposals. And to obtain VE port, you need to lock your port tokens. So you can create proposals such as increasing the port emissions for certain pools within port finance variable rate lending protocol, or incentivize providing liquidity for principal USDC token to USDC tokens, or you can create a proposal for doing an on-pro-like bond selling for port tokens. Basically, anything that you can think of can be discussed and be created as a proposal. And if the voting passes, it will
Yeah.
get executed by the Goki Smart Wallet.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Just in general, that shift towards decentralization. I might be repeating myself a little bit, but it's just such an important point that projects have this outlet and look to build a DAO, or else it doesn't really embody the idea of decentralized finance when you just have a core set of developers making all the decisions versus the most active and biggest users of the platform really making the decisions. So this idea of a DAO, if you're inside of Web3, you may hear it a lot. If you're outside, you may not understand it, but it really is truly important of driving home this idea of Web3 and having the users really be able to make decisions in a decentralized manner. So that wraps up what I was getting at with the entire idea of having decentralization, looking to even just offload some protocol development. So it's throughout the ecosystem, between the ecosystem grant, the super team DAO bounty, and then most notably the Tribeca partnership, which brought the DAO. I'm curious, you mentioned the port token. Can you just outline a little bit of what the idea behind the port token is, how it's used, the utility behind it? It sounds like a big aspect is the DAO.
Yeah, so I think port token firstly is a governance tokens where users can vote on important issues related to the protocols. And then also we are looking to expand more utility for port DAO, for the port token itself, where they can be, firstly now it can be used on port finance itself. And then going forward, we hope to launch more utility and then also do some sort of fee sharing among token holders.
Awesome. And the reason I was asking that question in general is Bilal was talking just about the port token in general, and he was asking how do you make the price the same as before. Price questions are typically never there. There's no right answer to them. It's not like the developers can control the question. But the reason why I was asking that is so Bilal, you can maybe get a better idea of what the port token is used for. If you hold enough tokens, it sounds like you could even push for things like changing incentives, things of that manner. But then it also sounds like there's utility on the way. But it's important to note the really key aspect of the Port DAO token is this governance token to allow users to vote. So I think understanding that utility might address your question a little bit more of how the team looks to add value to the token. And I'm just addressing some comments here in chat, Gabriel. There was another one by Bilal, and this was actually a question I was going to ask. He just worded it in a slightly different manner. Where's Port's place in the crypto world, and where do you see Port finance in 10 months? So what are the goals for the year almost, given that we're in the new year?
Yeah, so I think there's two new exciting new features coming up. So the near-term new feature will be a fixed rate borrowing features, where we will allow users to borrow at a fixed rate against their existing crypto holdings. So for example, I want to borrow $1 million USDC against my Bitcoin, or I want to borrow, say, $1 million USDT against my FTT, etc. And I think this will be something quite new to Solana. No protocol has done it. And then longer term, we are very excited about our new interest rate swap products, where it will allow users to actually do long or short the interest rate, and they can do it using leverage.
Yeah, that's actually, both of those are really notable. And I like the idea that you guys are, again, pushing for these fixed rate products, some things that some protocols maybe not are attacking, but just in the sense that there is a lot of opportunity. And that's what a lot of people who are looking to earn interest rates, they want them to be fixed, stable. They don't want it to be 40% one day, 1% the next. So I think that's incredibly notable. And that was really my last question there. Let me see if there's anything else. I mean, we'll respond to one more of Bilal Cardis's questions to close it off. I think the entire stream addresses this question, but I'm curious to hear how you describe port finance in a few sentences. And his question is, what makes you guys special from other products and projects?
Yeah, so I think our goal has always been to provide a whole suite of products that allow users to come to port, and then they'll be able to solve all of their fixed income needs, be it they want to lend at a variable rate or fixed rate, or do some swap against using interest rate. So we want to be that solutions. We want to solve all of users' issues, and they don't need to switch to other platforms. So I think that's our unique standpoint.
Definitely. And that really wraps it up. There's this last question coming through. I'm curious, or Bilal's curious, are you able to share the team size of Port?
Yeah, so right now we have 4 full-time engineers, and then also 2 other people working on the non-tech side.
Awesome. Yeah. So overall, that wraps up our discussion, Gabriel. We did a deep dive into port finance, and it's really interesting what you guys are building, whether it's the order book lending, the fixed rate lending. All of these things are attacking products that didn't necessarily exist in DeFi last year at the start of DeFi summer. So seeing this being built on Solana, offering innovation, it's really notable. Overall, that was my wrap up on the discussion. And I just want to thank you for coming on, Gabriel, joining us here at Solana News and sharing what you're building at Port Finance.
Thank you so much for having me, Greg. It's been amazing talking to you.
Yeah, 100%. So thank you, Gabriel. We'll definitely be keeping up on any updates on Port Finance. We've actually been following pretty closely, whether it's been the launch of this DAO or the Series A funding round. So it's really exciting watching Port Finance grow alongside the Solana ecosystem. And with that being said, I just want to thank everybody for watching. Definitely be sure to tune into Port Finance's socials and tune into Solana News. We'll be keeping an eye on Port Finance for you guys if you're not. And to wrap that up, please go ahead and subscribe, like the video, and tune in next time because we have a ton more content, and hopefully we'll be able to have Gabriel on in the near future once some new products come out. So thank you, everyone.